This is the TSG Multimedia podcast for November of 2020. We're sponsored this month by Soundtraxx, Rails by the Bay 2021, and the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Thank you very much. I'm your host, John Abaticola, and this month I have news from October, a few updates on some of the upcoming programs, and some great photos in our Catch of the Month segment where I feature your photos. This month, I also have a pretty cool announcement to make. The channel went over 9 million views and over 125,000 likes during October. It's pretty flattering to think that people have watched the channel that much. So I just want to thank all of you for your support. I'll do my best to continue the work that you obviously enjoy. And by the way, if you like the content on this channel, you can do your part and help create it by supporting us on Patreon. If you can't do that for some reason, hit the thumbs up button and share it with your like-minded friends. That also helps. Also, we've added some new designs in the Teespring store. You can see some of them right now just under the view screen if you're watching on a computer. If you like to gear up when you go out chasing trains, check out the new stuff and let me know what you think of it. Now, let's go to George from Soundtraxx and see what he has for us this month.
Hey John, good to be with you in another episode of our Soundtraxx installment, and we've got a little bit of a different take for you today. I know in the past few months we've done some new announcements, and unfortunately I haven't got one ready for us yet this time, but what I wanted to do was just take a few minutes to just kind of discuss what is the Soundtraxx Tsunami 2 decoder, some of the really big highlights of what you can get with the decoder. Model Railroader's Reader's Choice Award winner 2 times for favorite sound decoder, but why? So one of the things I wanted to point out with the new Soundtraxx hardware, the decoder has 16 independent sound channels, and what that means is it can play up to 16 sounds all at the same time, so one sound doesn't have to be prioritized over another sound. So when you look at these steam locomotives, for example, there's a lot of appliances on them. You've got things like the injectors, you've got the compressors, the dynamo, the safety valves, and all these other sounds that are working along, in addition to the whistle, the bell, the exhaust chuff, the brake squeal, and all of those different sounds. Now, with 16 independent sound channels, we've intelligently gone through and tried to make sure that all of the sounds that you're going to hear when the locomotive is running. Now, anybody can make a random noise generator, but Soundtraxx took the extra time to make sure we give you the actual sounds of a locomotive. And when we were designing the Tsunami 2, we had current and former railroaders on staff who knew very intently how these steam locomotives work. And so that way we can make sure to deliver the most realistic sound. So with Soundtraxx products, for example, when you hear the air compressor cycling on, if I start ringing the bell, you're not going to hear that air compressor mysteriously shut off, because in the real world, all of those sounds can play at the same time. So this is just some of the ways that we've improved how the decoders play back sound. Now, one of the sounds you can hear right now in the background is what's called the blower. Now, the blower is a pressurized ring that has steam pressure, and then there are ports that inject that steam pressure up and out of the smokestack. And what the point of the blower is to create a draft. So when you've got the steam pressure injecting out here, air is vacuumed out basically and sucks out the exhaust stack. What that does is it creates a flow for the heat coming out of the firebox to flow through the boiler and out the stack, so that way when the locomotive is sitting still, the fire doesn't essentially snuff itself out. Now, once your locomotive is moving, the exhaust chuff will then start creating that draft, and therefore the engineer can turn the blower off with a simple valve. Now, this is one of the things that we've brought to you, but did you know that the blower can change based on which exhaust chuff you choose? Now, this is one of the many sounds. This is the safety valve pop-off, and you can determine how frequently that boiler pop-off happens. This is a sound that happens when the boiler reaches maximum pressure. You see these valves right here along the top. And what that does is it will relieve pressure if the boiler pressure exceeds a certain percentage. And those have to be set each time before the locomotive is run. So these are just some of the ways that we've brought to you a realistic environment of running your steam locomotive. If any of these sounds were missing, it would almost be like turning off the exhaust chuff, because once you know the sounds are there and they're gone, they suddenly become missing. And especially when you hear the awkward, abrupt shut-off of some of the sounds when you blow the whistle or ring the bell, or in the case of a dynamo, turn it on, and then the sound disappears. That sound is very prevalent, and so we've tried to make sure to bring you all of that. Now, in our steam decoders, all of the sounds are preloaded, so you'll notice I've got two different types of steam locomotives here. I've got more of a modern Mikado 282, and then I have an older American 440 that would be around the time of the Civil War. Now you can select the exhaust chuff, the whistle, the bell, and all of those sounds to match. Now, one of the things that's really cool about our decoder is you can change, of course, how the sounds are played. So, for example, on this small little American 440, there is no air compressor. This was before the time of air brakes. And so we can take the air compressor sound, mute it, set it to 0. So now when they're sitting here, you're not hearing an air compressor randomly running. So these are just some of the ways that allow you to customize the decoder to match the model that you've installed it in. Now, for more information, please visit our website at soundtraxx.com and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. For those of you who are looking for our next announcement, there's a little Easter egg hidden inside of this video. So be sure to take a look, watch the video again, and see if you can spot with those eagle eyes what kind of a hint I'm giving you about our next announcement coming up with the Trainfest NMRA X. So be sure you're subscribed to the newsletter. So John, I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here with this month's modeling tip. And in this particular one, we're going to look here closely at this American 440. Now this is a Bachmann model that I have gone through and done some detailing work, including things like adding the bell pull cord, change the exhaust stack, change the pilot, and so forth on it. But one thing I wanted to point out was the type of fuel that's being used. So in this case, a wood-burning locomotive. Now, in our Tsunami 2, you have the ability to hear different sounds, and the sound you're hearing right now is the coal being shoveled on this particular steam locomotive over here. But on this one, this is a wood-burning locomotive, and so the sounds are going to be a little bit different. So in this case, when Fireman Fred is shoveling coal, actually you're going to hear wood being thrown onto a wood pile. Now, on this particular locomotive, what I did was I cut the deck down so that I got rid of the Bachmann cast wood pile, replaced the tender deck with a piece of styrene and painted it to match, but you're not really going to notice it anyway. And then I went out to the tree and just grabbed a branch and kind of trimmed it out, and you can see the wood looks like it's halved, and basically took a tiny branch and cut it up with a straight edge into manageable pieces that would be thrown into the wood fire. Now, the cool thing about this is that not only does it give you a better, more realistic looking wood pile, but in the real world, if they're quickly trying to get going, they wouldn't really worry about stacking it exactly right. So this gives us the opportunity to also hide the speaker port, which is in that same piece of styrene. So in that styrene, I've got holes drilled into the styrene to allow the sound to come out of the speaker. And so the wood pile is done in such a way that you can't really see, but the sound is still able to come out. So when I select this locomotive and blow the whistle, you can hear all those sounds coming out of the tender. Now, the one thing I will say about this particular conversion was space was extremely tight once I made this modification. So inside there, I removed the original circuit board, installed the TSU 1100 next to a current keeper, and then I was able to reuse the wires that are connecting between the locomotive and tender so that you don't see anything else. I also did have to remove the weights, but I was able to replace the weight using moldable lead from A-Line. So guys, don't be afraid to try different ways of approaching a decoder installation or making modifications like this to kind of help add that extra element of prototypical accuracy. I'll be honest with you, this one's still waiting for a little tiny bit of coat of weathering. I do want to put a little bit of black weathering on top here. Just haven't done that yet, been kind of tied up with other projects and stuff like that. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. John, thanks again for having us. Hopefully this has been helpful for your viewers. And don't forget to use the discount code TSG15 on your website purchases at soundtraxx.com for 15% off. Or visit your local retailer. We do ask that you support the retailers as well. We do want to make sure those guys stay around, especially during all the lockdowns and so forth. So, guys, be sure to support your retailer. But if you have problems or you can't find it, check it out at soundtraxx.com and be sure to use the code TSG15 for 15% off. John, thanks again, and I'm going to pass it back to you, buddy.
Thanks, George. I appreciate how you always find a way to share a modeling tip with the audience. Hey, if you guys like the Soundtraxx segment every month, be sure you use the discount code TSG15 that they've been nice enough to provide to us when you place your order with them. It gets you 15% off, but it also lets them know that you appreciate their sponsorship of this channel. Now, I know that a lot of my friends in my area always patronize our local train shop. The reason why is because they want it to stay in business, and it makes sense. If you make all of your purchases from your local train shop, it never hurts to call Soundtraxx or email them just to let them know that you appreciate their support of TSG Multimedia on YouTube. So anyway, Rails by the Bay 2021, our other sponsor, that's the name of the National NMRA convention that's being planned for next July in the Bay Area. It includes all kinds of great stuff like layout tours and clinics. So let's go to Chris Palermo now and hear about some of what's being planned clinic-wise for the convention.
Thanks, John. I'm pleased to announce this month that NMRA 2021 Rails by the Bay will feature some of NMRA's finest master model railroaders presenting 6 long-format clinics that we call Modeling with the Masters. In building a branch line coaling facility, which is priced at $48, as an extra fair item, Pete Youngblood MMR will guide you through scratch building the facility. With a provided plan, wood materials from Mount Albert lumber, and styrene for scratch parts, you'll learn how to build an eye-catching railroad line-side facility. The construction methods are applicable to all scales. You do have to provide your own tools at the convention site. Other Modeling with the Masters clinics will include roads and roadside details in a diorama given in 2 parts, white metal kits, building the GHQ bulldozer, building a mini scene with a bridge, hills, and a grade crossing, assembling an Intermountain Railways boxcar kit, and scratch building a small styrene building. Always popular and sure to sell out, Modeling with the Masters clinics are one of the most rewarding features of our national conventions because the half-day or longer format allows you to make significant progress on the project within the time allotted for the clinic. We're headquartered at the Santa Clara Marriott Hotel from July 4 to 11, 2021, and a dedicated team of volunteers is working very hard to make this a great convention. To request a mail-in paper registration form, send email to publicity@nmra2021.com. Online registration will open a little later, and hotel bookings will be available in early 2021. 2020 has been an extraordinary year, and we appreciate your patience and positive support as we continue to develop the convention under extremely challenging conditions. Visit the website at www.nmra2021.com for more information. And thanks, John, for your support.
Thanks, Chris. It's not hard to imagine the kinds of things people can pick up on by attending one of these long clinics. One of the best things about being a member of the Pacific Coast region of the NMRA is the vast knowledge of all the other members who are always willing to help anyone who asks become a better modeler. With a situation like that, no one ever has to reinvent the wheel. You can just learn from someone else's mistakes. It saves a lot of time and a lot of frustration, I'm sure. So hey, did you see the video that came out about 3 weeks ago about all the work that they've done at the Fern Creek and Western Garden Railroad this year? They relayed the entire railroad, and in doing so, they improved it immensely. It's worth a look if you didn't get to see the video. And also worth a look is the video about logging inclines with Jack Burgess. That one has been on fire since it was published, receiving over 30,000 views in its first week. I just wanted to mention these because I'm pretty proud of how well received that they've been so far. That one with 30,000 views might have even broken a record on the channel. I'd have to look that up, but it's a lot of views for 1 week. I want to tell you now about some of the things that happened this past month. On October 10th, we went out to Niles Canyon to talk with Henry Baum and Jeff Schwab. They had some announcements that they wanted to make personally, so let's go to that video now.
Hi, it's Henry Baum, President of the Pacific Locomotive Association, operators of the Niles Canyon Railway. I'm standing here in Sunol with our excursion train that we're operating as specials due to the COVID-19 virus. We require you to buy your tickets ahead of time, buy them online. We require everybody to wear a mask when they're on board. Keep socially distanced, but in general, it's an excursion train ride. We go from Sunol to Niles and back. I do want everybody to check our website for ticket availability. We're going to be running trains again in November, probably the first 2 weekends, because we don't want to get too close to Thanksgiving and the issues there. So check the website, come on out, and take a ride on the Niles Canyon Railway.
Hi, I'm Jeff Schwab, one of the volunteers here at Niles Canyon Railway. We are going to do a photo charter with the Skookum Photo Freight at the first week of December for 2 days. So look for that online. After that, we don't know when the Skookum will be leaving. It'll be sometime next year. We might do a doubleheader of Malleys at the beginning of the year before the Skookum. So stand by. We haven't worked that out yet. Right now we're doing the annuals on the number 4 and the Robert Dolly number 3. So the guys are busy with that, and we're also busy with just trying to keep the Skookum running for the rest of the year. Well, we're also currently getting the 1744 parts. Start to go through them, look through them. We're going to get the boiler to the boiler shop, and it'll start repairs here soon, from what I understand. Currently, we're not taking any extra volunteers due to the COVID issue. We have older volunteers that are really worried about their health and safety. So we're keeping it to a minimum staff. Once we get through this hurdle, we are going to be looking for more volunteers. We need more staff from firing up the locomotives, to running the locomotives, to rebuilding the locomotives. So be patient with us on that. You can always refer back to our website, ncry.org, and you can see all the future dates, and we're looking forward to you guys coming out.
I think this is great. They can't do the holiday train this year, so they're extending their running season into November. That gives everyone a chance to see the canyon during a part of the year that they don't usually run trains in. So you have a chance this weekend and next with 10:30 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. departures from Sunol. Go to their website to get your tickets and take a ride in Niles Canyon. Shortly after my visit, and Jeff alluded to this when he was talking, they announced a special photo freight charter that's being run in December. It's actually on December 5th and December 6th. This event is a fundraiser to benefit the restoration of the SP 1744 steam locomotive, and both days will feature a historically accurate period freight train that's being pulled by the articulated engine 2442 Columbia River Beltline number 7, also known as Skookum. The ticket holders get to ride in a separate chase train pulled by SP 1195, which is a vintage SW 900. You can get more information at ncry.org. So anyway, as we were leaving Niles Canyon, I got a text message from my friend Kevin that said something like, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" Well, when I get a message like that from Kevin, that usually means something good is going on. So I called him as soon as I got home. It turned out that Roaring Camp was running their Heisler with a special whistle called the Hooter that hadn't been on this locomotive in something like 20 years. So to make the situation even better, they were running the Shea as well as the Heisler up and down the mountain for 4 trips. You know what that means? Yeah, I went to Roaring Camp with Kevin and Curtis the next day to chase trains. We met our friends Paul and his dad, other Paul, up there, and while we were at it, I recorded for a Chasing Trains episode that'll come out in a couple weeks here on the channel. I've been wanting to get some 4K shots at Roaring Camp anyway, so this really worked out well. The TSG Train Crew on Patreon got to preview this episode in 4K ultra high definition last month with no ads, and some of them said that that alone made supporting the channel worthwhile. On October 13th, we drove out to Mariposa to document a layout before it got dismantled. So let me rewind just a little bit here. I got an email from my friend Glenn Sutherland about maybe 2 months ago, asking if I'd like to document his friend Paul's layout. He said Paul was going to dismantle his very, very nice SN3 logging layout in order to move closer to town due to some medical issues that he's having. I was a little hesitant, since we're still in the pandemic, and I think I expressed that in my response. What I didn't know at the time was that Glenn also has a layout. So Glenn wrote back and suggested that we document his layout and Paul's while we were in the area. At that point, I decided it would be a good move. So the good news is that we were able to document Paul's layout, and he'll have something to remember it by in its final state. I won't give anything away here, except to say that the layout tour video will be out here on the channel next Saturday, and it has some really amazing scenery on it. TSG Train Crew members got a sneak peek of this video as well in 4K recently, and it went over very well. So this is one you won't want to miss. After finishing up at Paul's place, we followed Glenn over to Bob Jekyll's house. Bob has a huge O-scale layout in an outbuilding where he lives, and I gotta tell you, it might be the largest privately owned layout that I've ever seen, and it's been in a few magazines as well over the years. So I'll be looking forward to that one a lot. So the next day we met Glenn and Paul at Glenn's place and took the whole day documenting Glenn's 3-level HO scale Sierra Railway layout. It was a long day. We had a great time learning about Glenn's approach to modeling, and it was also nice to get to hang out with Paul some more too. When we finished, Glenn's wife Kathy had a great homemade dinner for all of us, making it feel more like a visit with friends than a long day of work. Something else I did that same day was to check out Glenn's caboose room. Now, what's a caboose room, you say? Glenn had a room in his house built to look like the inside of a Sierra Railway caboose. I'm not kidding. It was even done to prototype specs. So the next morning, we went back to Glenn's house to document that for an upcoming video because, well, it was just too cool not to share. So after we documented that, we drove home. And I do want to take a second here to thank Paul, Glenn, and Kathy for making our first trip out of the Bay Area since last January very productive and at the same time very special. The layouts and the caboose room were great, but the friendship was even better. So thank you very much, guys. On October 17th, I went live with my friend Dave, you know him as Sparky107107, and we did a live call-in show like the ones that I've been doing over the past couple of months. We talked about what's your favorite model manufacturer? And it was a pretty cool discussion. We had a lot of people call in and participate, and we went for pretty close to 2 hours. And if you want to see that, you can go back in our live section on the main channel, and you can find it just by searching for TSG Live Call-In Show. I think you'll like it. On the 24th, I hosted a private virtual hangout with the TSG Train Crew with my friend and TSG Train Crew member, Dave Connery, as our special guest. You see, Dave has been involved with trains his entire life, including volunteering at Railtown 1897 State Historic Park for something like the last 30 years. He's also a very talented model railroader who had not only an HO scale layout, but also a large garden scale layout at his house. Over the past few years, I've come to know that Dave would be a great person to talk about his experiences with trains. So I asked him if he would be willing to share with the TSG train crew, and boy did he. We talked for like an hour. This was such a great hangout that I recorded it and edited it for release on the channel in the near future. I think everyone will like hearing Dave talking about some of the things he's seen and done. What a guy. Thanks again for doing that, Dave. I know you're watching. I really appreciated it. On the 25th, we went live on the channel with the TSG Live Crew Lounge program. I was joined by Dave Adams, John Coker, Scott Inman, Doug Jolly, and Adam Pinales for a talk about narrow gauge. We had a great conversation as usual, and I learned a lot. We're pretty lucky to have such knowledgeable people around willing to share what they know, and I feel pretty lucky personally to be able to gather them together to share these events with you. If you have any interest in narrow gauge, that's one worth watching. On October 29th, I received a message from Bernard Beck. Now you might recall, Bernard is the current president at Silicon Valley Lines here in San Jose, and he has appeared on the channel a number of times. He wants to tell us about the virtual open house that they're having at Silicon Valley Lines this month. So let's go to that now.
Hello, I'm Bernard Beck. I'm the president at Silicon Valley Lines in San Jose, California. I'd like to invite you all to our virtual open house on November 14th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. We are trying something new this year. Since the layout is still closed to the public, we are offering our virtual visitors an opportunity to run a train on our layout remotely from home. You will be able to control a locomotive and get a view of the track in front of your train via a video stream. And to do this, we are using the same cab view cameras that we use for our remote operating sessions. If this sounds interesting to you, please visit our website at siliconvalleylines.com for more information and to sign up. We will also have a YouTube live stream showing the action on the layout on the day of the open house. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you at our virtual open house on November 14th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. A virtual open house that you can run trains on from home. Sounds like it's worth checking out. Go to siliconvalleylines.com for more information. If you're watching on a computer, you can learn more about their setup by watching the last episode of Model Railroading 101 that came out in September by clicking on the little icon that's about to appear on the upper right corner of this screen. There it is. They ran a test session that was streamed live to the Silicon Valley Lines YouTube channel on the 30th. Everything worked out pretty well, so I figure that their virtual open house should end up being a pretty big success. If you have a chance, make sure to attend it. On Halloween, so last Saturday, we went to ride the beach train. That's the train that runs from Roaring Camp down to Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk and then back again. This was something that we've had planned for a while now, and the reason why is that I've never ridden the beach train all the way to Santa Cruz and back as a passenger. I had only hiked the line during the production of the DVD by the same name, The Beach Train, and we did a cab ride, but never rode it as a passenger. Now, to be fair, I have ridden their Holiday Lights train a few times now, and a couple months ago I found out that my friend Kevin also had never ridden the beach train. So Trevor invited us to ride it, because that was the last weekend that it was going to run this year. I want to thank Trevor before anything else for the invitation to ride. And at least for our part, Sydney and I enjoyed the ride very much. I might even like the beach train ride more than the narrow gauge ride, because the right-of-way is wide enough that you can see more of the forest. And it's also pretty cool because there's more variety in the trip, from the truss bridge over the San Lorenzo River to the wooden trestle at Powder Creek to grade crossings. There's a tunnel, there's street running, there's wigwags, and then there's the beach, and all the history and the narration that the conductor provides during the trip. I learned some stuff about the line that I didn't know about, too. The only thing I could think of that could possibly improve the journey is if it were pulled by a steam locomotive. That would be really cool. Anyway, the ride on the beach train was followed by a small gathering at the Fern Creek and Western in honor of Trevor's birthday, which was the next day. Normally, for Halloween, we'd be talking about a huge display at the Fern Creek and Western with a dozen animatronics and 10 fog machines and hundreds of lights and thousands of people. I'm not kidding. But COVID made sure that wouldn't happen this year. So it was just a few of us with, sitting around outside, socially distant, with our cloth masks on, running a few trains on the layout that evening. And you know what? That was just as good, all things considered. I'm just realizing now, as I'm talking about it, that this last month was almost as busy as a regular month when there's no pandemic. And things sure have been different this year. I'm curious, if you're willing to share, tell us how your year has been affected by the virus in the comment section down below. Just kind of curious. And now for this month's YouTube program schedule. This coming Wednesday, the 11th, it's an interview from one of the podcasts earlier this year about the Chicken going to the Placerville and Sacramento Valley Railroad in Folsom, California. On November 12th, we have a special live call-in show for which I have invited a special guest to co-host it with me. I want to make sure our co-host is a surprise, so I'm not going to spill the beans here. Let's just say that you've seen this person on the channel for a Chasing Trains episode and also on a recent video. If you have an idea of who it might be, put your guess in the comments section below and then be sure to tune in to see if you were right. We'll be talking about our favorite railroads and inviting the viewers to take part in the show live, talking about their favorite railroads. On November 13th, we have an episode of N-Scale Friday. On the 14th, it's the Lost Creek Lumber Company SN3 layout tour with Paul Claffey. On the 15th, it's my birthday. There's no videos that day, but I'm just letting you know so that you can send money and presents. On the 18th, we have something different. It's a video of the longest train ever run on the Fern Creek and Western Garden Railroad, longest train up to that point, taken in 2019. It's a fun video that includes shots from on the train as well as run-by shots. The record set in that video was broken last weekend. So here's a video of the train that broke it, taken by Kevin after we left the party last Saturday night. On November 20th, we have a product spotlight. And then on the 21st, it's chasing trains at Roaring Camp. On November 25th, Glenn Sutherland shares his Caboose room with us. This is another example of something interesting that you don't see every day. On the 27th, N-Scale Friday returns. And then on the 28th, it's something new and different. A look at a scratch-built Denver and Rio Grande Western parlor car. This model was built by Dave Adams for his ON3 Durlin branch layout. In the video, he not only shows off the model, but he also talks about some of the techniques he used for building it. On November 29th, it's the TSG Live Crew Lounge panel discussion. The topic for this episode is model trains, from holiday gift to lifelong hobby. We'll talk about how a simple present for under the tree can change a person's life by introducing him to a diverse and dynamic hobby. I didn't count, but I think there are more programs in November than we've had in any month this year. It might even be a new record for the channel as a whole. And now for your catches of the month. Mitchell Stack from Australia sends in these photos. The first one is of a Climax locomotive, number 1694, as it departs Menzies Creek on the Puffing Billy Railway in 2016. Here's a shot of locomotive 7A in 2018 sitting over the pit at Belgrave, also on the Puffing Billy Railway. And here's a more recent shot from 2019, also from Puffing Billy. This one shows 12A at Menzies Creek Station. Ralph Renzetti, who's known by many of us for his model weathering, sent in a few shots of some models that he's been working on. Ralph does weathering for customers, and he has a YouTube weathering show on Model Railroading Live. He likes to share his techniques wherever and whenever he can, so I figure that makes us lucky. These first two shots are HO scale models that he weathered, and the rest are N scale. So as I was looking at these N scale models, I was thinking that they look bigger than that. It's pretty cool to think of what a good weathering job can do to a model. You can look up Ralph's Facebook page by searching for Weathering by Ralph on Facebook. This shot comes from Dennis Loudon, who caught a BNSF 25th anniversary locomotive at Wilmar Yard in Minnesota. Dennis also shot this cool Canadian Pacific unit leading a military train east at Dayton's Bluff on the CP main line. Here's something you don't see every day, a wrecked BNSF locomotive in St. Paul Yard. And finally, here are some historic shots submitted by our top secret associate foamer. She's been scanning a large collection for the SBHRS archives and wanted to share these vintage shots. No information was included in the collection notes, so if you know anything about what's in these photos, feel free to add your comments below so we can figure out what, where, and when these things are. If you have a photo you'd like to share, please email it to podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. Be sure you own the photo and let me know the whats, whens, and wheres of the shots you want to share. So, that's all I have for you this time. Before I go, I want to invite you to become a part of the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Support from Patreon helps me bring all the high-quality content that you enjoy to the world. I think you'll feel great helping put the content that you enjoy on the channel, and you'll get some pretty cool perks too, including ad-free 4K ultra-high definition content before the rest of the world even knows it's going to be put out. So as always, I thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you next time.